Every small town has one of those boards. Cork, rain-warped, tacked up outside the post office or the sheriff's substation. Lost dogs, yard sale flyers, the occasional missing persons notice with a grainy photocopy face nobody quite recognizes. I walked past mine almost every day for 4 years without really looking at it. 3 weeks ago, I looked, and pinned near the bottom corner, half curled from old rain, was a case file with my own face on it. Not a missing persons flyer. A photocopied intake sheet, the kind you'd only ever see in a coroner's office, complete with clinical notation and a photograph I made myself stop looking at after half a second, because some details, once seen, do not leave. The date printed in the corner of that file was 11 days from that afternoon. I am telling you this from 8 days out. I don't know what happens at 0. My name's Aaron Whitfield. I'm 38. I run a small hardware store in a town called Larkspur Hollow, tucked into the hills of West Virginia. The kind of place with one stoplight, a diner that's been open since the 70s, and a community bulletin board outside the post office that's basically been unchanged my whole life. I've walked past that board most mornings for 4 years, coffee in hand, on my way to open the shop. I never really registered what was on it beyond a glance. Church bake, sale flyers, a lost beagle named Duke that's been missing, so long the flyer's practically part of the wood at this point, the occasional handwritten room for rent ad. 3 weeks ago, on an ordinary Tuesday, something at the edge of my vision made me actually stop and look. A sheet of paper, curled and rain-warped like it had been out there through at least one storm, tucked half behind the Duke flyer in the bottom corner. Official looking. Different from everything else on that board. No crayon lost cat drawing, no church logo. A header formatted the way you'd see on a government document. County seal in the corner. I almost kept walking. Something made me not. I pulled it free, and the first thing I registered, before my brain even caught up to what I was looking at, was a photograph clipped to the top corner. Black and white, grainy from a bad photocopier. A face. My face. Not a portrait. Not anything I recognized from any photo I'd ever taken. Something clinical about the angle, the flat lighting, the total absence of expression, in a way living faces simply don't hold. I looked at it for maybe half a second before my body made the decision for me, and I looked away, down at the block of text beneath it instead, because some part of me had already understood what kind of photograph I was looking at and did not want to understand it any further. Case file formatting. Clinical shorthand I didn't fully understand, but recognized the shape of from crime procedural shows. Notation about condition, about time elapsed, the kind of bureaucratic, bloodless language that exists specifically to describe a person as evidence instead of a person. And printed clearly in the header, in a date field, was a date. 11 days out from that exact Tuesday morning. I want to tell you, I called the police immediately. I didn't. I stood on that sidewalk for what felt like 10 minutes, the paper shaking slightly in my own hand, doing the very human thing of trying to build any explanation that wasn't the obvious one. A cruel prank, some elaborate joke from someone who didn't like me, a coincidence. Maybe it wasn't even my face. Maybe grief and bad photocopying had turned some stranger's likeness into something my brain, unhelpfully, decided looked like mine. I brought it to the sheriff's substation 2 doors down. Deputy Sarah Given. I've known her since high school. Took one look at it and went pale in a way I've genuinely never seen on her before. She confirmed, quietly, that the formatting was real, that the county seal was accurate, that the case file numbering followed the actual sequential system their office used for real cases. She also confirmed there was no case file with that number in their system. Not open, not closed, not archived. It simply did not exist, according to every database she could check. She kept the original, told me she'd look into it, told me not to worry, in the specific tone people use when they very much want you to worry less than they currently are. That was 3 weeks ago. The notices kept appearing. Not always the same board. One showed up taped inside the diner's front window, another folded into my own mailbox with no postage, no return address, like it had simply been placed there by hand sometime in the night. Each one identical in content, each one showing that same clinical photograph I refused every single time to look at for more than half a second. Each one carrying the same date, unmoved, unchanging, counting down whether I acknowledged it or not. And worse than the notices themselves, the town started to shift around me in small, quiet ways I couldn't quite name until they'd already happened. The woman at the diner, Doris, who's poured my coffee every morning for a decade, started looking at me sometimes with an expression I can only describe as grief. Not concern, grief. The specific, soft, sad look people reserve for someone they've already, on some level, said goodbye to. I heard, secondhand, through a customer at the shop, that someone had left flowers outside my hardware store one morning before I opened. Not vandalism, not a threat. Flowers, laid gently against the door, the way you'd leave them at a memorial. Nobody could tell me who. 4 nights ago, with 4 days left on the date printed across every version of that notice, I did something I'm not proud of. I went back to that community board at close to midnight, alone, because I needed to see if a new one had appeared, needed some kind of proof one way or the other instead of living inside this slow, grinding dread. There was a new one, same board, same corner, tucked behind Duke's flyer exactly like the first. Except this time, forcing myself past every instinct telling me not to, I made myself actually read the clinical notation in full instead of looking away after half a second like I had every time before. Most of it was the same bloodless procedural language, but near the bottom, in a section I hadn't let myself get to on any previous notice, there was a line I still cannot fully explain. A location. Not an address exactly. Coordinates, the kind you'd find on an official document, cross-referencing a specific stretch of the county. I recognized it immediately. The old grain silo access road, 4 miles outside town, a stretch of gravel nobody uses anymore since the mill shut down in the 90s. I want to be honest that I don't fully understand my own decision to drive out there that same night, instead of waiting for daylight, instead of calling Sarah, instead of doing literally anything else a reasonable person would do. I think, somewhere underneath the fear, I needed to prove to myself it was nothing. An empty gravel road. Nothing waiting there at all. I found the access road exactly where the coordinates pointed. Overgrown, exactly as abandoned as I remembered it from childhood. My headlights swept across old rusted fencing, collapsed silo structure, weeds grown up through cracked concrete, and parked at the very end of that gravel road, engine off, sitting completely still with no headlights on of its own, was a vehicle I did not recognize. I sat in my truck at the mouth of that road for a long time, engine running, watching that unfamiliar car sit motionless in my headlights, waiting for any sign of movement. There wasn't one. Not the entire time I sat there. I turned around. I drove home. I have not gone back. That was 4 nights ago. The date on every notice is tomorrow. I've told Sarah everything, every detail, including the car parked at the silo road. She's promised to have someone drive by tomorrow, quietly, without making it official, since there's still no actual crime on paper to justify anything more. I keep thinking about Doris's face at the diner, about the flowers left at my door by someone I never identified, about a town that seems to have already, in small, unspoken ways, started grieving me, days before whatever is supposed to happen has had the chance to happen at all. I'm writing this tonight because I don't know what tomorrow holds, and because some part of me needs it written down somewhere outside that bulletin board, in case the next version of my case file is the one that finally gets filed for real. If you're ever walking past a community board in a small town and something in the corner catches your eye the way mine did, I'd think very carefully before you decide to look closer. Some things, once you've seen them, cannot be unseen. And some things, I'm starting to understand, were only ever waiting for you to look.